The air in the Varkesh market was thick with smoke and the scent of charred metal. Strange shapes moved among the stalls, some carrying glowing wares, others bartering in guttural clicks that Elias Wren could not understand. He was used to the heat and the chaos, but the chains biting into his wrists reminded him that he had no freedom, no place in this world. Once he had a home, somewhere on a blue planet now only remembered in stories and memories. Now he was nothing more than property, an object to be bought, sold, or used. Elias had learned quickly that humans were rare in these outer systems, considered curiosities at best and labor at worst. The auction was about to start, and the noise of the crowd rose into a deafening roar. The platform was high, and humans like him were lifted one by one, displayed to bidders who barely looked at their faces, judging them for strength, age, and obedience. When Elias was finally pulled forward, he tried to make himself small, hoping to go unnoticed. But humans were always noticed. Whispers spread through the crowd. "A child of the dead world," someone murmured, and the phrase made him shiver. He forced himself to stand tall, though his legs shook. The auctioneer, a large creature with 6 arms and eyes like polished onyx, began speaking in a language Elias did not know. Numbers and gestures flew through the air, and the bids began. 1, 2, 3, 400 credits. Elias tried to calculate in his head how little that was, how little a life was worth here. Then a hush fell over the crowd. The doors at the far end of the hall opened, and a figure entered. Elias had never seen anyone like her before. She moved like light, graceful and confident, with a presence that demanded attention without a word. Her skin glowed faintly, soft lines of bioluminescent light tracing the contours of her face and arms. Her eyes were deep pools of shifting colors, and her gaze fell directly on him. She did not rush to the platform. She did not speak at first. She simply walked through the crowd, her silence louder than any shout. When she reached the auctioneer, she raised a hand and the market went still. "I want him," she said, her voice like water over stone. The auctioneer blinked his many eyes. "Madam, the bidding has barely begun. I will pay what is asked." No less. And just like that, she became the winner. Elias felt a mixture of fear and disbelief. He was being taken from the cages, not by a slaver, not by a merchant, but by someone whose presence seemed impossible in a place like this. The alien, Lady Sareth Valrian, as he would later learn, did not look at him with hunger or curiosity. She only looked with attention, as though she were trying to see all that was buried inside him, the parts the world had tried to crush. Her hand touched the chains, not to harm but to guide, and they fell open with a soft click. They left the market together. The crowd parted instinctively, though none dared to speak. Elias followed silently, unsure whether to trust this stranger, unsure whether trust even mattered anymore. Her ship, the Radiant Veil, waited outside. Sleek and silver, it seemed to shimmer even in the dim light of the moonscape. Inside, the ship was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Soft lights illuminated strange artifacts from countless worlds. There were vases filled with liquids that glowed in shifting colors, tablets carved from materials Elias had never seen, and delicate instruments that seemed more alive than machines. "You will not be a slave here," she said simply. There was no threat in her voice, no authority demanding obedience. She walked past him, her movements fluid, her eyes never leaving the strange collection of items she clearly loved. Why are you helping me?" Elias asked, his voice small and unsure. Sarath turned, and for a moment she seemed almost fragile. "Because your life matters," she said. "Because someone must protect what is rare and beautiful." Her words felt strange in Elias's ears. He had not heard kindness for so long that it hurt to believe it. Yet something about the warmth in her voice made him hope. Days passed as they traveled through the stars. Elias watched the planets and moons glide past, each one alien and yet full of life. He learned the ship's systems slowly, under her patient guidance, though she never forced him. She asked him about Earth, about the world he had lost. He described the forests, the oceans, the songs people used to sing to remember home. He expected her to dismiss him or grow bored, but she listened with fascination, sometimes smiling as though tasting something sweet. "You humans treasure simple things," she said one day, holding a small sphere that shone like sunlight trapped in glass. "A song, a seed, a memory. You hold them even when everything else is gone." Elias nodded, unsure how to explain. He had never thought about it before. Maybe that was why humans survived, why they kept going even when the universe seemed to have turned against them. Eventually, they arrived at her sanctuary, a hidden world untouched by conquest or war. It was beautiful beyond words. Forests that shimmered in colors he could barely name, waterfalls that glowed under alien moons, and fields of flowers that glimmered faintly in the dark. And amidst it all there were creatures, small and large, each saved from destruction. Elias had never seen a place so full of life and care. "This is where I keep what the universe forgets," Sarath said, her voice soft. "Every life, every artifact, every song. I cannot save them all, but I can save some." Elias wandered among the creatures, feeling awe and fear mingling in his chest. It was strange to feel so small and yet so safe at the same time. He picked up a battered object, a guitar scratched and worn. He strummed it tentatively, and the sound filled the room, weak but real. Sarath's eyes filled with tears. "You humans," she whispered. "You carry your world with you even when it is gone." For the first time in years, Elias allowed himself to feel hope. Here was someone who did not see him as property, who did not want to control him. Here was someone who valued life as he once had, before the chains. But peace did not last long. One evening, alarms blared across the sanctuary. The sound was sharp, urgent, a threat slicing through serenity. Elias and Sarath ran to the viewport. Outside, a fleet of slavers descended, their ships armed and menacing. They had traced him, come for their lost prize. Sarath's eyes hardened. "They will not take him," she said. There was no fear, only resolve. "Not while I can stop them." The slavers boarded the sanctuary. Chaos erupted. Elias found himself pushed into action, ducking under debris, grabbing what he could to protect her. In the heart of the attack, he saw her stumble as a beam of energy struck nearby. Without thinking, he lunged, pulling her out of harm's way. Breathless, they ran to the ship, dodging debris and sparks. Together they lifted off, escaping into the void as the sanctuary's alarms blared behind them. Elias held onto the controls as best he could, and Sarath guided him. Their movements synchronized in an instinctive understanding. Finally, in the quiet of space they drifted, hearts pounding, silence wrapping them like a fragile shield. Elias looked at Sarath. The glow of her markings dimmed but still warm. "You saved me," he said simply. "No," she said, voice gentle. "We saved each other." Elias stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, blue and fragile, and he imagined it as it once was. The thought made him ache, but also gave him strength. He was alive. He was free. And maybe, just maybe, the universe had room for hope after all. The ship sailed onward, a small beacon against the endless darkness, carrying two unlikely companions through the stars. And for the first time in a long time, Elias felt that maybe he could belong somewhere. That maybe life was not just survival, but something more. Beauty, love, and the undoubted wonder of earthly things. The stars stretched endlessly around the radiant veil, each point of light a reminder of worlds Elias might never see, yet worlds where life still clung stubbornly to hope. Days had passed since their escape from the slavers, and the quiet between Elias and Sarath was comfortable now, filled with unspoken understanding. He had begun to learn more about the ship, the controls, and the strange instruments Sarath carried, while she had begun to learn about him, his small joys, and the memories he carried of Earth. Elias spent hours showing her the simplest things, the little pleasures humans held dear. A cup of hot coffee made from ground beans salvaged from an old supply pod made them both laugh when he showed her how to drink it without spilling. He hummed songs his mother had taught him, and Sarath listened intently, fascinated by the rhythms and emotions that came from his voice alone. For the first time, she allowed herself to smile in the presence of another being without the burden of grief or obligation. But the peace could not last forever. As they approached the edge of uncharted space, a message arrived through the ship's communication array. The Arakari Dominion had marked her as a traitor, and the Council demanded her surrender along with the human she had taken. They would not negotiate, and they made it clear. Refusal would mean destruction. Sarath read the message, her glowing markings pulsing faintly as she clenched her hands. "I will not give him up," she said softly. "I cannot." Elias studied her, sensing the weight of her decision. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me," he said carefully. "If they catch you, it could be the end of everything." Her eyes met his, fierce and unwavering.
"My life is mine, but your freedom."
"That is priceless. I will not let them take it from you. Not ever." Elias could not find the words to argue further. There was a fire in her that both frightened and inspired him. She was willing to risk everything to protect someone she barely knew. And yet in that risk lay a beauty and courage he had never encountered. They decided to find refuge on a planet abandoned long ago for research purposes. It was a barren world with jagged rocks and shallow rivers of strange glowing liquid. But Sarath saw potential. Elias noticed the change in her demeanor as they landed. She walked with purpose, scanning the horizon for threats. Yet her gaze softened whenever she looked at the small sprouts of life she had begun to cultivate. As they explored, Elias noticed tiny seeds scattered among the rocks. "What are these?" he asked. "They are from Earth," she said, her voice carrying a strange reverence. "They were kept alive in emergency pods. I thought, maybe life from one world could survive here, even if it is far from home." Elias carefully took one of the seeds and held it in his palm. "I didn't think anything from Earth could survive out here," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. "I thought it was all gone." Sarath shook her head gently. "Not everything is gone, Elias. Life finds a way. Humans, flowers, music, even memory. They survive in ways we cannot always see." The first night on the planet was quiet, broken only by the soft glow of the bioluminescent flora Sarath had already begun to nurture. Elias watched her work with reverence, seeing in her movements a kind of grace that reminded him of the world he had lost. He felt a pull in his chest, a strange mixture of admiration, trust, and something warmer he could not yet name. "You're different from everyone I've ever met," he said softly. Sarath paused, glancing at him. "Different, perhaps, but so are you. You hold on to your home even when it is gone. That is rare." Elias swallowed hard. He had been a slave, a commodity, a being without value. Yet here she saw worth in him beyond strength or usefulness. She saw life itself in his very existence. The thought warmed him, a light that pushed back against the darkness he had carried for so long. Days passed in a rhythm of learning and discovery. Elias helped her plant the seeds, nurture the glowing plants, and catalog the strange creatures that had found shelter on the planet. He began to understand Sarath's grief, her loss of a mate who had dreamed of preserving the beauty of countless worlds. In turn, he shared stories of Earth, of oceans and forests, of the people who had once lived there and the songs they had sung. One evening, under the strange auroras of the planet's sky, Sarath spoke again of her past. "My mate, he tried to save worlds, but he failed. His work, his dreams, all led to destruction in ways I cannot forgive. And humans, your people, they suffered because of it. I cannot undo it, but I can try to protect what remains." Elias looked at her, understanding dawning. "You've carried that guilt alone for a long time," he said. "But saving me, giving me a chance, maybe that's more than any of us could ask for." She nodded, her eyes glowing softly. "It is enough for me, Elias. It must be." Their fragile peace was shattered when sensors picked up the Dominion fleet entering orbit. Drones moved across the sky, scanning for life. Sarath prepared for confrontation, her hands steady as she accessed the ship's defensive systems. Elias felt fear surge in his chest, but it was tempered by the knowledge that Sarath would not let them fail. The first wave of drones descended. They were fast, deadly, and relentless, but Sarath moved with precision and grace, guiding Elias to fire defensive pulses, to redirect energy shields, and to use the terrain to their advantage. Every action was a test of trust, and every success strengthened their bond. Amid the chaos, Elias saw a drone target Sarath directly. Without thinking, he pushed her out of the way, feeling the heat of the blast ripple past him. She steadied him, her hands firm on his shoulders. "You saved me," she said quietly. "No," he replied, panting. "We saved each other." Together, they retreated to the radiant veil and launched into the void, weaving through the fleet's formations. Elias took control of the ship for a brief moment, remembering the maneuvers he had practiced in simulation. Sarath guided him, her voice calm and steady, a beacon in the storm. In the distance, the planet's auroras flared brightly, reflecting the energy of the battle in brilliant, shifting colors. For a moment, it looked like the sky itself had come alive to protect them. Using the planet's magnetic field, Elias managed to redirect the energy of the ship's reactors in a controlled burst. The light exploded across the horizon, blinding the Dominion fleet and giving them a chance to escape. When the danger had passed, They floated silently in the black expanse. Elias looked at Serath, still glowing faintly, and saw in her eyes the same mixture of fear, relief, and wonder he felt in his own chest. "Are we safe?" he asked softly. "For now," she said, placing a hand on his. "But the universe is vast. Danger is never far. What matters is that we are together, and we continue what is good and alive." Years passed in quiet determination. On the hidden planet, they cultivated life, nurturing the Terran seeds until flowers and trees grew, strange hybrids of Earth and alien flora. Small creatures from destroyed worlds thrived in the sanctuary, and the two of them worked side by side, creating a garden that glowed faintly in the darkness. Elias learned to play the guitar again, and Serath listened, her eyes closing as she let the music carry her to memories of joy she thought she had lost forever. Sometimes she hummed along, the sound soft but beautiful, blending alien tones with the human melody. They spoke often of Earth, of the people who had lived there, and of what had been lost. Yet in their shared efforts they found hope, proof that life, no matter how fragile, could endure. One evening, as the sky shimmered with colors unlike any he had seen, Elias looked at Serath. "You gave me something no one else could," he said. "And you gave me something I thought was lost," she replied. "An undoubted love for earthly things." They smiled at each other, knowing the path ahead would not be easy. But the radiant veil carried them forward, a symbol of hope, of resilience, and of life that refused to be extinguished. Together they had survived the darkness, and together they would create something new, something beautiful. For in the end, it was not strength or weapons that had saved them, but care, courage, and the small, powerful things that made life worth living. Hope, love, and the undying wonder of the world they carried in their hearts. And so, in the quiet of space, the widow and the human lived among the stars, tending their garden, sharing stories, and nurturing life wherever they could. They had faced the universe and survived, not as master and slave, but as companions, friends, and perhaps something even deeper. In a universe that often forgot its children, they had remembered, and through their memory life endured,